my name's Dave, and in this video we're going to continue where we left off in the last video on variables and operators. So we just stepped through this program line by line, and I still have the program running in debug mode, so I want to click on this stop button here. This button here is basically just stops the program, so we want to stop the program, and so I'm going to click on this. That will stop the program. So now we're back in the regular Visual Studio. So I have this clicked here, selected. This is the break point, and this is where the program is going to stop. So I'm just going to deselect that. So let's go down a couple lines, and I'm going to create another variable called count. Right. This is something that integers are used a lot for in programming, or is counters. So plus plus and count minus minus. Okay, so here we have two plus signs together, plus plus, right? And basically that just adds to whatever's already there. So in this case, it's starting with 0, and actually this is be the exact same thing. This just gives it a default value of 0, as we saw earlier, but this just does it explicitly, right? So we're assigning 0, the literal 0, the int literal 0, to the variable count, right? So this is starting with a value of 0, and we're going to add 1 to 0. So the plus plus just adds 1 to whatever's already there. And this is such a common thing. And actually, let's do this the long way. Count plus 1. This is the long way, right? And same thing here. Count minus 1. So this is the long way to do exactly the same thing. We take whatever number's in that box, in that variable called count, and add 1 to it, or in this case minus 1, subtract 1. So this is such a common thing, especially the adding one. This is such a common thing because you're incrementing 1 to the number, and you're just counting. It's just you're counting whatever it is you're counting, and this is such a common thing that you have these operators plus plus and minus minus, and this is the incremental operator, I think it's called. So the plus plus just means take whatever's in this box, add 1 to it, right? Add 1 to it, and that's it, and then reassign it back into the box, right? So this is just a shortcut, short way of doing that, and this does the opposite. It subtracts, right? So let's go ahead and set a breaking point right here. I'm going to click to the left of the numbers, or you can click select the statement or the line and hit F9. Either way, F9. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. We'll click on the start button, and it's going to run up to that point. So, and here we see we have number, right? Remember, 23 was that last value for number. It was 71 divided by 3. It gave us 23. It truncates the decimal. So that's the value. That's why the variable number has the value 23, right? It's that last value, and that's of int type. So now we have a new variable called count, right? And this has a value right now of 0 because we assigned it 0. It's also the default value. We have to assign it before we use the incremental operators. So we have to explicitly assign it. So this has a value of 0. It's of int type because we declared it as an int, right? And so let's go ahead and step over. Go to the next line, execute this line, and step over. So that all it did was assign 0 to the variable. It did it explicitly. explicitly meaning we told it to, right? Okay, so and now when we click step over again, now it's going to execute this line and then go to the next line. So we want to execute this line. So let's see what happens when it executes this line. Note the little yellow arrows telling you which line you're on. So we're on this line right now. So click on step over. So it just executed this line, or this statement. It executed that statement and went to the next statement. And what did that do? It added 1 to 0. This was 0, so the plus plus just added 1, right? It just added 1 to 0, and of course gave us 1. So now the variable, the box count, has a value of 1. So the plus plus just says add 1 to take out whatever's in that box, whatever it is, and add 1 to it, and whatever the result is, assign that back to the box, right? Drop that number back into the box. So let's click on step over again, go ahead and execute this line, and this minus minus does the opposite. It says take whatever number's in that box, in that variable, subtract 1 from it, right? And whatever the result is, assign that back into the box, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and stop the debugging, or you can also do Shift F5 if you prefer shortcuts. And you can also do F5. F5 will run the program, Shift F5 will stop the program. So if you prefer to use the shortcuts, F5 and Shift F5. Okay, so let's still have the breaking point. We'll go ahead and deselect that breaking point. And let's go down, and we're going to talk about strings. Okay, so I have some more code here. And let's take a look at this first line. I've created this string, and what I want to do is join this string and join the number, whatever the result from this is, right? And I want to join it with this string. Yeah. And I do that by using the plus sign. The plus sign. In this case, the plus sign is not concatenation operator. It's concatenating. Concatenate just means joining strings together. That's all it means. Just joining strings together, combining strings together, gluing strings together, right? So we're combining these two things together, right? And in this case, number is actually not a string, right? It's an int. And we can only join strings together. We can only join two strings together. But what this plus sign does implicitly, without you telling it to, it will convert this number type to a string. It'll convert that number type to a string. You can also do it explicitly, if you prefer, by calling that method toString. Yeah, do that one more time. And I'm going to use the dot. Yeah, just click on the dot, or I mean just type dot rather. Type the dot period, which is the access operator. We'll talk more about that later. And it'll give you some options, right? And this is IntelliSense. It's giving you some options. So just type dot. The IntelliSense popped up. It gave me these options. One of them is toString. These are methods. Method just does something, right? And I got to have parentheses because it's a method. So I'm calling this method toString to explicitly convert this number, which is int, to a string. So now it's a string. But I actually don't have to do that because the plus sign, the concatenation operator, does that for me. Note that the plus sign here is just an arithmetic, like a calculator plus sign. Right? I'm just adding numbers together. Whereas here it's the concatenation. I'm dealing with strings, right? You can't add a number to a string, right? It's just like adding a number to plain text. It's not going to work. So it's going to convert this number to plain text or string, and then combine the two together. It just combines it together. That's called concatenation, right? Concatenating strings. So, and I've got to note the little space here because I don't want the numbers, together. I want a little space. And this line, I'm going to print this to the screen. I'm going to write this to the screen, the console screen, so we'll see it. All right. So let's look at this one first, and then we'll take a look at this later. So let's go ahead and run this. And there we go. So the result is 23. So the result here is 23, right? 71 divided by 3. Remember, it truncates the decimal, so we get just 23, the whole number. So that's the result here. So that's what's in the box. The last number that's in that box, so that variable result. And I concatenated it with this line. The result is, and I put a little space there, so there would be some space here. And actually, let's look at it. I'm going to go ahead and stop it. Let's look at it without the space here. Let's get rid of the space there and run it again. And we see now it's all bunched together. So that's why I put a little space right there. We want some space there. So I'm going to add a little space here, and now it just looks a little neater, and we have a little space. So the result is 23. So what the plus sign did was converted that number 23, which is a number, it was int type. It converted it to a string, which is just plain text, right? And it also combined that string with the other string, with this, right? So this is a string. We know it's a string by, how do we know this is a string? The quotation marks, right? The quotation marks denote that it's string, just plain text. So the plus sign combines these two together. First, it converts this to a string, because you can only combine strings. And then once it converts this, or converts this to a string, it combines the two strings together, right? And it drops the result of that into this variable, this box, right, called results, or result, right? And the result is of string type. That's the data type, right? So, okay, so let's look at this code here. I have a variable of string type, right? And I only put a string in there. And I named it my name, and I'm using camel case, the convention camel case. The first word is lowercase, and the rest of the words are capitalized. So my name is just the name of the variable, the identifier, and I'm using quotation marks. All right, you got to have those quotation marks. That's what tells C# that this is a string. And I just put my name in here, right? So that's assign that, the equal sign, the assignment operator assigns that string to this variable, this box in the computer's memory, right? So it just drops it in that box, or that variable. And I have another string, and I've named this greeting, right? And here I'm using the concatenation operator again. And I have a string literal here. This is a string literal. This is not a string literal. It's a variable. This is not a string literal. So you would not, put quotation marks around this. That doesn't make, that's not going to work. Here it just makes it a plain text. It just makes it a literal, a string literal. But we don't want that. We want the variable. Right? We want this variable. So this is not a string literal. This is a string literal. This is a variable that holds a string, right? It's like it's a box, and there's a string in this box, right? And the box is my name. So this says get whatever's in that box, and it's a variable that holds a string, only holds a string. Get whatever's in that box, whatever it is. It could be any name, it could be anything. Could be Steve, whatever. It could be anything in there. Get whatever's in that box, whatever string's in that box, and concatenate it, concatenate, combine, join that string with this string, right? And again, I got a little bit of space here, just to make it look neater. So let's go ahead and run this. All right, let's go ahead and run that. We'll run both of them. Okay, so that's the first one. So it's waiting on me. What the read line does is waits on you to hit a key. It's waiting on me to hit a key. So it's waiting to read the line. That's why it stops. It's waiting on me to read a line. So the write line just writes, whatever, just writes to the screen, whatever value you pass it. The read line waits until you hit a key, right? So it's waiting to read a line. It's trying to read a line in. So that's what it's waiting on. So I'm just going to hit spacebar or anything. Just hit any key, and it should run. Actually, I'm going to hit enter, and it should run the next the statements here. So here we go. Hi, my name is Dave. Right. So see how it combined. Hi, my name is, right here, and then it combined it, or joined, concatenated with whatever happened to be in that box, whatever it is. And in this case, it was a string called Dave, right? So it just combined those two together. So that's all the plus sign does when you're working with strings. It concatenates or joins strings together. So that's the concatenation operator. And the result of this gets assigned to this variable greeting. The write line writes to screen whatever's in that box, whatever's in that variable called greeting, right? So let's move on to booleans. Let's do a couple of Bullion variables, and let's see, we can call this yes, no, and just give it a value of false. And this will say my bool. Give it a value of true. Alright, yes, no, equal sign, alright, so I'm going to introduce you to another operator. This is the not operator. The not operator, or invert, or not. Invert, not. It's the not operator. Anytime you see an exclamation mark in computer programming, it probably means not, negative, right? Negatory, not. So this is the not operator, and basically what it's doing here is inverting. We'll see another use for it when we get to conditional tests, but here it's actually inverting the Boolean value. So I've created this variable, two of them. The first one's yes, no. That's the name of the variable. Yes, no, it's a Boolean type. We know a Boolean can only take true or false. There's only two options. Or you get true, you get false. That's it. No gray area. It's either true or false, right? So you assign false to, we're assigning false to this variable, yes, no. And that's what the equal sign does, assign this to this variable. And my bool, we're assigning true. And what the exclamation mark does is inverts my bool, in this case, is true, right? It's true, so we're actually going to invert it. We're going to invert that. Okay, so actually I've changed this variable to yes, no, and do the same with my bool. So this way we can see them change. Okay, so basically all this does in this case is just flips. This is the not operator, and it's just going to flip. So this yes, no in this case is assigned false. This is going to flip it to true. And my bool is assigned true, so the exclamation mark is going to invert it or flip it to false. So let's watch this in the debugger. Alright, so I set my breaking point, start. Okay, so now it's stopped here. So let's go ahead and execute these two lines. So yes, no, this variable has been assigned false, and this one's been assigned true, right? So we're on this line, on this line 42. So I'm going to step over, and now yes no is assigned true, right? So and now it has the value of true, and it's bool type, right? Yes no right here. So now it's been assigned true, and my bool has a value of true as we assigned it true, right? So bool type. So let's go ahead and step over. So it executed that line. So now my bool has been assigned false, right? So we assigned it true here. Then here with the exclamation mark, we flipped it, which changed it to false, and then assigned it back to the variable my bool.